What's up, guys? It's John Dominique, the Soul Proponent. Today I want to talk about the group versus the individual agenda. It's a big difference between our individual personalities and the group personalities and their agendas and what's important. For instance, I was raised as a Catholic, and it was important for me as a youngster, not knowing any better, that I am accepted by my family members, by my peer groups, by the authorities that surround me. So choosing to be a Catholic was almost an unconscious option. I didn't really think about it. It was almost automatic. And I know I'm not the only person that had that issue and decided to be a Catholic because everybody else was a Catholic. Now, being an individual, the group agenda, the ideas and the beliefs, the rituals, the practices, the traditions, the culture of being a Catholic totally overrides the will and the agenda of the individual. The individual is lost. So in a way, I felt what I wanted to do wasn't important. I felt left out. I felt in a way that I lost a part of myself for the good of others. And it was appealing because, that's the way Jesus lived. And I think in the Bible, Paul states, hold other people as more important than yourself. That type of attitude, that type of mentality was so ingrained and embedded in my skin, in my DNA, I never really questioned it. Again, because it was so important to live up to the agenda of the group versus my own, having the right to have my own ideas, my own beliefs. And it was scary to figure it out on my own because I didn't know any better. I just had to believe what was told me because there was nothing better that I could think of on my own. And it wasn't until much later in my life that I had, the spiritual awakening that I was able to actually come up with something which was much better. But for now, what I'm talking about is the group versus the individual agenda. And that group agenda, I'm sorry about all the background noise here, but at a public library, so just bear with me on this. The group versus the individual agenda, there's a conflict because the individual has to get crushed for the good of the group, for the good of the whole. And that's why Christianity, that's kind of the mentality and what's the word I want to use here? That's kind of the way things are with the group. The group has a need to dominate. It has a need to become the majority way that people think, that people act. And we get our individual personality from the group personality. So I extracted my own beliefs from the group that I was, surrounded by. So being a Catholic, again, was a natural thing because I grew up as a Catholic, and I was like, well, there's nothing better than being a Catholic. And it was actually detrimental to try to not be a Catholic because what you would get was being an outcast, being considered an outsider, and it was almost like a threat to your way of living because it feels like without the support of the group, without the support of my family, without the support of the authorities, I would die. I wouldn't have anywhere to go. I wouldn't have anywhere to sleep. I wouldn't have any food. I wouldn't, my resources were dependent upon this relationship with my parents and the authorities and the group agenda. And if I go outside of that, then my life is threatened. I don't have those resources anymore. I don't have access to those resources. And having access to those resources is very important because without them, it's almost like, well, you're off on your own. No one's going to support you. People are going to look down on you. They're going to make fun of you. You're going to get ridiculed. You're going to be shamed. You're going to be made to feel guilty. That's how the group agenda works. The group agenda places you at a disadvantage if you're trying to break out on your own and be an individual. Now, the individual rights are important because without being an individual, you're just a number. You're just like everybody else, and you can't express your own beliefs. You don't have the. It feels like you don't have the right to decide for yourself what to believe, what to pursue. And people kind of, make you feel bad for it. Okay, so for example, if you don't know all the answers, if you don't have any beliefs at all, if you went down that route, people would make you feel like, well, this guy doesn't know anything. He's no good. He's going to end up nowhere. And the feeling you get is, I'm worthless. And the bottom line on an unconscious level is that worthlessness is a way to control and manipulate you. Nobody wants to be made to feel worthless. Nobody wants to feel that worthlessness in its entirety. So people have to find a way to avoid that worthless feeling. And one way to avoid that worthless feeling is by being a good Catholic, being a good Christian, following the rules. You're going to get approval. You're going to get love from the people around you. Oh, this guy's a good guy. He knows all the rules. He follows the rules. I trust him. He's welcomed in our circle. So going on an individual path, it's very difficult because you can't really sustain that type of lifestyle because it's scary. There's fear. So it's very difficult, being an individual and going against the group agenda. Not even going against it, but just separating yourself from that group agenda. There's a separation anxiety. Feels like you're gonna lose everything. You're gonna lose. There's like a separation from, on a deep psychological level. It's like you're gonna lose the closeness to your mother and your father, and that sense of everything's gonna be okay. They're gonna feed you. They're gonna take care of you. They're gonna comfort you. They're gonna provide for you food and shelter. That feeling has to be challenged. And in a way, we have to go off on our own and decide for ourselves what's true for us instead of what's true for everybody else. And look, I'm not saying that it's bad. The group agenda is bad, because we need to have some type of agreement on certain levels, and it's good up to a certain point. But if I had continued to live my life like that forever, I would just be made to feel more and more worthless. And that's almost makes things worse. For me, to go on with my life continuing to feel worthless does more harm than good in the long run. Like I said, in the short run, it could be good for like little children and people who need that type of structure and who need something to go off of because they have nothing else to go off of. Of course, that's one way of doing it. Just applying the structures and the scaffolds that have been handed to you, and to apply them to your life. That's almost necessary. It's a part of the growth, stage of the growth. But to continue depending on it forever, it doesn't work. So in a way, you have to be ready to be able to take on your own individual agenda, because it's going to go totally against the group agenda, and this is a conflict. It's a major source of frustration, and that separation anxiety is enormous. There's a peer pressure to stay within the confines, stay within the structures of the group. Again, because if you go out of it, you're going to be made to feel like there's a separation anxiety. You're going to lose all your support for everything. You have to go off on your own and live on your own, and it's very difficult to do that. And most people don't have the skills, they don't have the know-how of how to do that, to go about it. And I didn't either. So in a way, that has to be a skill set that has to be developed. And it's not something for the lighthearted. It's something that you have to really want deep down inside yourself to come to grips and to come to terms with that individual agenda and finding your own path, making your own marks. Not an easy thing to do. But it's important, again, because if you hang on to the group agenda forever, you get lost. You don't find your own individuality, and that's a painful way to live. Living according to how other people want you to live, according to what's important to society, living up to the standards that they provide for you. And if you look at that deeply, in a way, to live up to the group agenda is a way that we extract our own self-worth, the feeling of being good, the feeling of being worth something, and to get care and approval and praise from other people. That's not self-worth, though. If you look at it deeply, that's worth dependent on something outside you. That's not self-worth. Self-worth comes from within. So if you look at that, and you can learn from it, because there's a craving to feel that goodness, to feel love and approval and acceptance from somewhere. And if you can't get it from within inside yourself, the only other way you can get it is from outside yourself. So it's an automatic peer pressure, unconscious. It's a way for you to get that love, approval, praise, and that feeling of I need to be acknowledged and recognized. These are important needs, especially as we grow up developmentally as children. Like, we need to have these things. Without them, you just feel you probably wouldn't be able to survive. So we have to understand the importance of this, but again, to depend on it forever and to get lost and to lose yourself and to be erased, your own individuality gets bypassed, it gets overpowered, overshadowed by the group agenda. After a while, it gets very, very painful. And for me, it got to the point where I was like, look, man, I have to let go, and I don't care what the consequences are anymore. There's no way for me to hang on to this belief system anymore, because it's too painful. I would rather, and I could understand why people would actually kill themselves and go and kill other people and do mischievous things and go out and, into the church and murder a bunch of people, because that's the feeling. It feels so rageful and angry. Like, you have to take out that anger somehow, some way. You can't hang on to it forever. Excuse me. And if you do, you end up going crazy. I went crazy, and I guess I got lucky. I tried to jump into hell, and I didn't get hell. I got heaven. I got the reverse. Some other people are not so lucky. Some other people are, dead or in jail from, the consequences of having to try to hang on so tightly to the group agenda and overriding their own individual agenda. That's very, very painful, and I don't recommend doing that forever. Again, up to a point, yes, but eventually we're gonna have to learn how to come up and find our own individual agenda. John Dominique, the Soul Proponent.